Hi, I'm Brent Haynes with Wood Sound Flutes, and today we are going to learn a bit about how to play a double flute. What I just played was Zuni Sunrise. I played it first as a single flute. I'm playing it on a low E double flute made out of walnut. It has a little bit of myrtle burl and some cherry on it. And right now I have this double flute set up with all of the holes on the bottom flute covered. So my double flutes, they literally are two completely separate flutes that are joined with this mouthpiece and this saddle and this saddle. I call these saddles that join the two flutes. The mouthpiece separates the airstream that I blow in but through two holes here in the mouthpiece. So I can control putting air to the top flute or putting air to the bottom flute or putting air to both simply by where I position my mouth. The hole on the right hand side sticks down a little, or sticks out a little bit, so that you can find it easily with your mouth and play that easily as a single flute. I have a number of people. Steve Rushingwind, in fact, was telling me how he often will play his double A. He bought a double A from me years and years ago, and he just loves the flute, and so he plays it a lot of times just as a single flute, and then of course he uses it as a double and as a drone. So what is the difference between a double and a drone? Well, we'll get into that. What I just played, again, I played as a single flute where it was just one flute. And then I played it as a drone, and that's when the bottom flute plays one note consistently all the way through. So that's as a drone. Now, you could play the drone and actually have it jump up an octave when you have all the holes covered, because it's easy to get the bottom flute to jump if you want. So I could play. So that's one way that you can get two notes with a drone, and that's just simply done with breath pressure. What I'd like to do is we're going to use just the song Zuni Sunrise, and we're going to talk about a lot of different ways to play the flute using the song Zuni Sunrise. In Zuni Sunrise, I will break the phrasing up of Zuni Sunrise, something like this. And then I'll take a breath and play the next part. But if I'm playing two flutes at once, I have to supply twice the breath to the flute. And so what I do is I actually just cut my phrasing in half. So instead of playing that whole part in the beginning as one breath, I'll play it as two. Something like this. Now, that was a little bit of an extreme example. I actually could have held both of those phrases. That was two phrases with four breaths. And I could have played all of that in just two breaths. But I'm trying to explain to you, I'm trying to illustrate simply the idea behind breathing twice as frequently. Some pieces of music, it's a lot easier to take a breath more frequently, and some it's more difficult, and you have to be strategic about where you take your breaths and really kind of thinking about that. Typically what has happened for me with the double flute is once I realize that in order to supply the breath that's needed to this instrument, I don't have to worry about my huge lung capacity. I have to only worry about how much am I going to breathe in and where am I going to break up my phrases so that I can take those breaths. And as soon as I realize that it's more of an intellectual problem, as meaning where am I going to breathe, rather than a physical problem, how big are my lungs, all of a sudden I'm able to play it, and I don't even hardly think about it anymore as soon as I realize it's just a matter of breathing twice as frequently. We played the flute as a single flute, and we played the flute as a drone flute. We're going to continue playing as a drone, but with this flute configuration that I have, you can slide back this leather and uncover the first hole on the flute. And that will allow me to now drone with a different note. Creates a totally different vibe, right? Having that different note to drone with. I like that a lot better personally than I do the bottom note for Zuni Sunrise. Additionally, I can take the next hole and uncover it. Now I have two holes uncovered, and again we'll play it as a drone. So the bottom flute is droning a single note, top flute is playing multiple pieces or multiple notes. Right? Totally different. Isn't it crazy? I love this. I love hearing all of the variety that you can get out of the flute with just doing really simple things like changing the drone note. For me, it's a lot of fun, and I can actually just get completely lost in the sound of the instrument and loving the way that it feels, the way it makes me feel, and the things that I can do with it. So now we're going to play it as a drone again. I have 3 holes uncovered on the bottom flute, and I have, and I'm going to play all the holes on top. All right, totally different vibe. And I'm going to take it one step beyond. If I want to stay in the pentatonic minor, which is the easiest way, I don't want to uncover the next hole because I'll be out of the pentatonic minor. But if instead I slide back both of the next 2 straps and uncover the second hole from the top, so I've got top hole covered, 3rd finger down covered, and everything else opened, we can drone this way too. I think that's really cool. To me, that was a lot of fun. I actually haven't ever done that. That was the first time I've droned with that note, and I think it's really cool. A lot of fun can be had there, I think. But I'm going to go ahead and cover those top 3 holes up again, because the vast majority of the times I pick up a double flute, I play it like this. I play it with the bottom 3 holes uncovered, and I have, and then I actually play it with one hand on top, and I play it with one hand on bottom. Now, you'll notice that I play left hand. I call it goofy hand because it's playing with backwards from what most people do. It really doesn't matter how you play, whether you play bottom hand down, top hand down, or whether you play right hand down or whether you play left hand down. It doesn't really matter. The principles are still the same. So I'm going to go ahead and we're going to play it as a double flute. Now, the difference between a double flute and a drone is that when I play the top flute, I'll play different notes, and the bottom flute now, instead of playing just a single note, I'm actually going to use these finger holes, and I'm going to play some other notes as well. And I got to tell you, I actually have never done this with Zuni Sunrise, so this is the very first time that I will have done this with Zuni Sunrise, but I think it's going to work really great. I'll try and keep some of the raw footage of when I really screw things up so that you can hear what that sounds like, and not everything's perfect. You don't get to edit life all the time, right? And so that'll be kind of fun. But what I want you to pay attention to, and what I'm going to try and do, is I'm going to try and uncover holes on the bottom flute very carefully. I'm going to do it quite slowly. I won't make really fast changes on the bottom flute. Just every once in a while I'll change the droning note. And then on the top flute, you know, I'll play the top part of Zuni Sunrise. But then at one point, Zuni Sunrise melody is going to shift down to these bottom 3 holes. And then the top hand will actually become my accompanying hand at that point. So this is what I'm talking about. So here's the first part of Zuni Sunrise. Okay, so that last part there was pretty continuous all the way through. Had to edit a little bit out because it's a learning curve. It takes some time to figure out what are you going to do, where are you going to switch your fingers. So let's talk about what just happened. As I was playing the flute, when I first started playing, I was having trouble timing my fingers, when to drop my fingers on the bottom flute and when to do the top flute and all that. It's like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do here. I'm worried about what's going on on your side of the computer where you're trying to interpret what I'm doing, and I'm worried about what I'm trying to do, and is it going to sound good? Does the flute sound good? Are they going to like what I'm doing? All of those things are going through my head. And so I had to kind of push all of that aside and just kind of, what's going on with me? And I realized that when I was playing, I was trying to go down with the bottom finger on the bottom hand. I was trying to go down at the same time as I was going to go up on the top flute. And the timing of that was very, very difficult. But what I found was if I changed it just a little bit and dropped the note on the bottom flute one note earlier, then I was dropping them both when I was at the same time. Instead of lifting one on the bottom and dropping one on the top, I was dropping both fingers. And that was easier for me to time. With practice, I could do the other. I could drop the bottom finger while I'm raising the top finger. But it's harder to do to begin with. It's very much, playing a double flute is very much doing this. Rubbing your head and patting your tummy. And people say, don't rub your head, you make a mess of it. Your hair, well, that's true. So we should pat our tummy and, no, rub our tummy and pat our head. Yeah, it's hard to say and do at the same time, right? And then if you want to switch and go the other way and go, you know, like this, it gets really crazy trying to go back and forth. What happens when I rub my tummy and pat my head, for me, that was really hard to do when I first tried to do it. And over time, particularly as I started playing the double flute, I realized that what I have to do is I have to let one part of my mind think about rubbing my tummy and one part of my mind think about patting my head. And once I did that, it became a lot easier to go back and forth, you know, from patting one and rubbing the other to patting, you know, the tummy and rubbing the head, and go back and forth and switch hands and be able to do either one, because I've got two different parts of the brain doing it. You know, intellectually, on paper, that all makes sense, right? How do you really do it? Just practice. And I actually believe that the whole patting your head, rubbing your tummy thing is a really good exercise for playing the double flute. In fact, it may be one of the best exercises because it helps you develop that ability of using your brain in two different ways at the same time. So let's go ahead down through that again. I just want to play that Zuni Sunrise again as a double flute. And let's talk about what I'm doing. So as I start, I'm going down on Zuni Sunrise. Actually, I'm just going sequentially down the flute as I do the melody on the top flute. I just am sequentially going down the flute. I have a very simple pattern that I'm going to allow my fingers to do. And then what I did is I allowed my fingers on the bottom flute to come up when I raised some fingers on the top flute. And so that changed it a little bit, and it sounded pretty good. Then when I changed and I went to the melody went to the bottom flute, I kept the top flute as a drone for a little bit. So those were some things about the double flute that I wanted to talk to you about. There's other exercises that you can do. I'm certain that you'll come up with some thoughts and ideas about songs you can play around with. There's several of you that I've been meaning to get this video out to for, I think, 3 months now. I've been working on getting this video out, and so I'm glad we've got it out finally, and that's great. But there is just, I guess, one more thing that I want to talk to you about. Other than if you have more questions after this video, if something didn't make sense, or you had some idea that you're just not quite able to flush out, give me a call. I mean, just pick up the phone and call me, 801-822-1415, and let's talk about what's going on and what your questions are, and help you get to where you're playing the flute the way you want to play it. So the last thing that I want to talk to you about with the double flute is cleaning and caring for it. Cleaning and caring for your flute is really, really important, particularly when you have a double flute or a bass flute that has a side blow. It perhaps has got a convoluted breath path, and that's what's going on here with the double flute. This is a really cool mechanical device that allows us to do some really amazing things, and still yet it's a very simple instrument. That simplicity is something that we love. But in order to achieve that, I have to create air paths in this mouthpiece here that deliver the air to the top flute and to the bottom flute. And that's complicated. That means that my breath path is a complicated process. It doesn't just go straight in and out the flute. It goes in and up and across, and this one goes down and across. And so water is going to be our enemy. Water is the enemy of all wood, right? If you leave a glass on a table, even if it has finish, lo and behold, you get a ring on the table, and sometimes it just will never go away. And that's really frustrating. I did that once in this really fancy house. We were house sitting, and I felt so bad. I was really young and didn't know what I was doing, and I'm afraid I really ruined a piece of furniture that was very valuable. And so it really taught me a lesson to be careful about using water on the flute. In fact, as I have this flute just tipped up a little bit, some water is coming out on my fingers. So it just so happens I have a microfiber cloth right here. And yesterday I purchased a whole bunch of microfiber cloths, and I'm actually going to put a flute care kit together. I'm very excited about that. So what I'm doing is I'm just tapping the flute, and you know what? I'm not getting much water out. How come? Well, as I tap that flute, the water comes down, but it has to come across, which is straight across and then down. It's just really hard for it to do that. So I need some other way to get that water out. Well, if I'm in a hurry, at the very least, I want to just slide all of those back. Slide the totems back from slide the totems back from the nest area and uncover the exit hole from the airstream, or from the first chamber. And then what I want to do is turn it upside down and hold it like this a little bit. I'm going to kind of put my microfiber cloth up in here. It's going to capture some water, and I'm going to hold it down here on the bottom so I can capture some more. I'm going to just blow through one hole at a time. Now I'll go to the top flute. Now the key is that I'm holding, you can see all this moisture coming out. The key is that I'm holding the flute up at a very gradual angle and blowing. Now don't pop an eardrum when you're doing this, but try and blow a couple of times to get that breath through. and to get that moisture out. And then of course I wipe it down, clean it off just like I would any other flute. That's if I'm in a hurry. That's what I'm going to do. You know, I'm up on stage, I've got an off stage, I got to pack up my gear and go get you know, French fries and hamburgers with everyone down at the Denny's or what have you. And so you don't have a lot of time to take care of your flute the way you want to. That's when you allow this to happen. If you have time to do the proper cleaning, you actually want to take each totem off the flute. And so you just simply untie the leather. You could leave the leather partially tied to the flute if you wanted. There's nothing wrong with that. And of course, I clean the bottom of the totem first. I just clean that off, place that to the side, and then I take the bottom totem off as well. And I clean that and place it to the side. Now, if I've left the leathers on the flute, I can simply lift the flute or the straps up a little bit, slide the totem under it, and then tighten down and do my thing, adjust the totem and all that. But if you want to take the leathers all the way off, there's nothing wrong with that as well. Clean the bottom of that, we'll set it over here. And so then I may, you know, after I've cleaned everything out real well, I may take again and just hold it there for a minute. Not at a big angle upside down, but just a slight angle, and blow. Oh, didn't get any more. I'll do it to the top flute. Oh, I didn't get any more there. So my flute's all ready to aerate and dry. I'm going to leave it like this overnight. If I were you, I would leave it with the totems uncovered for at least 4 hours. Preferably leave it overnight with the totems off and then put the totems on in the morning or at some later time. And you're going to get a lot of joy out of your flute if you do those things. If you don't do the careful things with caring for the flute and getting rid of the water, you're going to have problems. There will be problems that happen with your flute. You may have some loosening of joints. You know, even though this is very well constructed with internal structures to hold all of this together, it's not just flat glued together. There's a dowel that comes from the flute and goes all the way into this part of the mouthpiece on both sides. So it's very well built. But even still, if you let that water get in there and sit, it's going to cause a lot of havoc. So just get them clean if you would, and I think you'll be quite happy. Again, I'm Brent Haynes, Wood Sound Flutes. If you are interested in double flutes, I would be just delighted to talk with you about them. They're an awful lot of fun to play, and something that's worth all of the little bits of care we just talked about to do. It's worth that, to be able to play an instrument that will just suck you into the sound and keep you there for a long time. Have a wonderful day. Brent Haynes, 801-822-1415.